All right, it's a little past 7, and I want to welcome everyone to this evening's continuing program of the Festival of Training. I'm pleased to announce that we're going to be going into the Rotary Leadership Institute. Your primary presenter is Kathy Gitson, and just a few reminders. She'll have a special guest later in tonight's program. So as a reminder, Rotary is an international organization where together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities and in ourselves. To avoid feedback, please do keep yourself on mute, which I believe won't be an issue as we are using the web, but if you have any questions, feel free to take advantage of the Q&A and chat functions. I'll be monitoring the chat functions during the presentation, but we'll be using Q&A for the question and answer session towards the end. And there are 2 bonus sessions, one on Thursday from 5 to 6 and another on Thursday from 7 to 8. So whether you're interested in changing something about Rotary or finding out how to optimize online Rotary meetings, please do plan to take advantage of those bonus sessions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kathy for tonight's session. Kathy, please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, and welcome everyone. Jeff, can you get my camera going?
I'm seeing your image.
Oh, okay. I'm not, but that's okay as long as everybody else can, because I want to be able to talk to everybody. So tonight we're going to focus on the planning that's underway for our district-sponsored training, and it's training about Rotary, about our clubs, about our district, and about Rotary at the international level. I'm going to welcome your input on the training needs and who will benefit from the targeted training we're going to be offering about Rotary. However, as Jeff indicated, the main portion of this evening's program is going to focus on the future direction of our district training and our adoption in the new Rotary year, 2020-2021, of the RLI is the acronym, the Rotary Leadership Institute, or what we may morph into, which is the Rotary Learning Institute. And we'll talk more about that. So let's go to the next slide, Jeff. I want to talk just for a minute about the training that we have had in the past in our district. And it's been called the Rotary District 5030 Academy, or the Rotary Academy. And since the early 2000s, our district has been developing and delivering its own proprietary training about Rotary. And we've used it to educate Rotarians on the fundamentals of Rotary. The need-to-know elements in our Rotary Academy included some Rotary history, some deep dives on the different avenues of service, club and district management and administration, public image, and information about the Rotary Foundation, both at the international level and here in our district. Every year, probably 20 to 50 Rotarians, often president-elects, enrolled in this self-study and group study course that covered 7 modules and was administered by between 6 to 7 to sometimes 8 Rotary Academy faculty members. Today in District 5030, there are over 300 Rotary Academy graduates, and I'm one of them. In fact, after graduating from the Rotary Academy in 2004, I think it was, I spent 7 years serving on the faculty, and 3 of those years as co-chair of the Rotary Academy. So I look back and I know I benefited greatly as a student of the Rotary Academy. I learned a lot, and it gave me that first step into serving at the district level. However, over the past years, the Rotary Academy programs evolved. I remember when I started, it was a 3-ring notebook that we had the materials in. And then it was put on a floppy disk, and then on a flash drive, and then ultimately it was downloadable training modules. And every year the faculty would review the content and update it to reflect changes in Rotary policy and practice. However, the burden of keeping the Rotary Academy content current and fresh became unsustainable. And the fact is the Rotary Academy has not been offered in the past 2 years for that reason. It was out of date and it was just too hard to play catch up with all the changes going on from the Rotary International side. So this means that the training needs of our Rotarians in our district have not been met, and we want to address that. So who needs to learn about Rotary? Well, club leaders immediately come to mind: club officers, committee chairs, board members. They need to know because they're going to be implementing Rotary policy at the club level. They need to understand how the foundation works and the different types of grants and a variety of other details that will help them as club leaders. But in fact, brand new Rotarians can benefit from learning about the amazing organization that they've joined. And given Rotary's innovation and new partnerships and all of the resources that Rotary's been updating and providing, I'd argue every Rotarian in our district could have a better and more informed Rotary experience by taking Rotary-specific training. And as I look back on one of the probably unadvertised benefits of the Rotary Academy, I valued the opportunity to meet other Rotarians from around the district in an even more intentional and structured way than what would happen at a district training assembly or at a district conference. We were in it together over the course of a year, studying the content of our Rotary Academy. But as I mentioned, the Rotary Academy is out of date, and to bring it up to date and keep it up to date isn't sustainable. So we've been looking at alternatives, and one of the compelling choices for us is RLI, the Rotary Leadership Institute. Now, RLI is a grassroots coalition of Rotary districts that had the very same challenge, the very same intent that we do in terms of educating Rotarians. RLI started back in the early 90s. It's gone global and is translated into a variety of languages, has core content about the Rotary fundamentals. It's excellent for club leadership, all types of leaders. They position themselves for emerging leaders and current leaders and even past leaders in the club, in clubs, so that they stay current with what's new in the Rotary world. RLI, probably their value proposition, at least as they promote it, is that a good Rotary club has good leaders, and those leaders need to know about Rotary. And that was really what our Rotary Academy was trying to accomplish. So what I'd like to do is invite Jeff to play this brief, it runs a little more than a minute, video about the Rotary Leadership Institute.
And stand by while we pivot.
Welcome to the Zone 33 Rotary Leadership Institute, also known as the RLI. We hope you will join us at one of our one-day events to discover more about your Rotary Club and Rotary International. More importantly, we hope you will discover how influential you can be in impacting the lives of people in your community and throughout the world. We believe that every Rotarian is a leader, and RLI helps you best understand how to bring those leadership skills into Rotary service. Each one of our events is led by Rotarians who have been trained to facilitate discussion and help the participants learn from their shared experience. Discussions include team building, leadership, planning, and communications. Learn from others about their service projects, how they recruit new members, and help keep their members involved. Learn more about the good works done by the Rotary Foundation and how it can be used to fund projects in your community. Over 700 Rotarians attend one or more of our events each year. They are not only people who will be serving as club presidents, but other club members who want to discover the world of Rotary beyond the club. We welcome all to join the conversation.
There we go. All right, thank you, Jeff.
And we'll pivot back to the presentation. And Kathy, please continue.
Okie doke. So that was a quick video that another, excuse me just for a second here.
We're sorry we're unable to take your call right.
I apologize for that. I've got too much communication going on in the same space tonight. So that was a promotional video from another district that was promoting RLI, but it gave a good and quick overview. There's some lengthier videos available on RLI, but that was a quick overview of the experience and why it was valuable to Rotarians in that particular district. One of the reasons that we like RLI, and I'll have you advance to the next slide, Jeff, is it has a recommended curriculum. And this is sort of the standard format for a standard RLI program. It's divided into 3 parts, as you'll see here, and each part has some specific topics. There are a couple of different ways to present it in discrete, individual, one-day sessions. So you'd come in for part 1 and then come back a month later for part 2 and come back sometime after that for part 3. There's been some innovation that we're going to hear about to merge that and blend it into sort of a single event training. But these are the kinds of topics, many of them are very similar to what we had in our Rotary Academy, but they're updated. So let's advance to the next slide, if you will. So as we look at the alternatives for a successor to the Rotary Academy, and this Rotary Leadership Institute, RLI, is the one that is used around the Rotary world. Most districts did not have their own proprietary programming. They adopted RLI. And this was definitely the case for our sister districts to the south, to the east, to the west, and to the north. And the district to the north of us is District 5050. And it runs from Snohomish County up to the Canadian border and on in to British Columbia. And I'll have you just back up one more slide, Jeff. No problem. So I wanted us to learn from the experience of our neighbors to the north, fellow Rotarians who have embraced RLI for more than 10 years. And in particular, one of the past district governors from 5050, Linda Jean Coyle, is going to join us tonight. And I've asked Linda to share with us a little bit of the history of how District 5050 introduced and rolled out RLI, how the benefits, the challenges, but what I'm particularly intrigued with is the innovation and the adaptation that 5050 has done in terms of taking that standard RLI content and format and modifying it to meet the needs. I also like the fact that 5050 has collaborated with another district, 5060, in terms of understanding best practices and having an opportunity to see how they are developing the content. So Linda Jean, I want to thank you for spending time with us tonight to give us some perspective and some of the lessons learned from District 5050. So fellow Rotarians here in 5030, please join me in welcoming past District Governor Linda Jean Coyle.
Welcome, Linda, and we can now
there I am.
see you. Yes.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone is still feeling bright and shiny, even though you've been, are you guys locked in like we are? I feel like I'm in prison at home. We're not supposed to leave the house.
We're all sheltering in place too.
Okay, that's, oh, is that the proper terminology, sheltering in place? Anyway, thank you very much. It's been nice talking with Kathy and talking about RLI. I have no control over the slides, is this correct?
I can advance them when you're ready.
Okay, well, first of all, let me just tell you a little bit about me. I started in the District 5040 and was introduced to RLI when it first came to the Pacific Northwest in 2007 and have been doing RLI since then. Now, today, however, things have changed a bit. A little bit about the history in 50/50 because I've always lived in District 50/50, but I went to the Rotary Club in 50/40 because it was the only one that had an evening club. I couldn't do the middle of the day. In 50/50, even when I was in 50/40, I would come to 50/50 to facilitate because they didn't have enough facilitators. For your information, Kathy, your classmate, Carol Tickleman,
Yeah.
introduced RLI to 50/50.
Right.
Prior to that, 50/50 was doing the academy. So they had started doing the academy, but once Carol saw RLI, she thought it was a much better program, much better, because it wasn't a self-study, it wasn't a assignments and then talking. It was Rotarians coming together and learning from one another. And that was well received in the district. We've had, over the years, I would say we've had close to 1,500 participants in our RLI sessions. And I was trying to find out how many actual graduates, that is, those who have taken all 3 parts, but I haven't been able to find that information. So the advantage was Rotarians sharing and basically talking with one another, learning about other clubs. One of the things that often surprises me is how few Rotarians visit other Rotary clubs. And that visiting other Rotary clubs gives Rotarians an opportunity to see something different, to find out that their club is really doing some things really well, and there are other things that they might innovate with. The other thing is we are a 2-country district because we go down to just south of, well, we bump up against 50/30. And so we have to offer our programs on both sides of the district. So we introduced RLI, 3 separate days of training. And that meant 3 parts. Anyone who wanted to complete the program, often it took months or even years for it to fit into their program, or their schedule rather. And also because we have 2 countries, we would alternate. We would have them in Canada and then in the States. And then of course there's the problem with crossing the border often for people, both in terms of the amount of time for travel, but sometimes there are people who can't go across one border or the other. Right now, next slide, I think. Right now, we're considering another way of delivery. You mentioned, Kathy, that you noticed that the participation in the academy started reducing, sliding off. That also happened with our RLI. We found that often we would schedule sessions, we'd have to cancel them because we did not get sufficient enrollment. And that becomes a little bit costly, and it's also disheartening for those people who want to take the training. So since that was happening, we kept talking about what could we do. Most people would not have the time to do RLI one Saturday and then the next Saturday and the next Saturday, or even in one season, in the fall or the spring. They just simply didn't have that kind of time. And then of course, once they stopped, they didn't often come back. We always found that we would have the highest enrollment in part 1. We would get fewer in part 2. Actually, we always were able to offer part 1. We would always get full enrollment for part 1. And then we would get fewer for part 2 and a lot fewer for part 3. So that was really a problem. And we wanted to know what could we do about that. Well, District 5060, as far as I know, came up with this idea, and 5110 actually has followed with it as well. A weekend where in fact they would take all 3 parts and had them across 2 days on a weekend. And we had a lot of interest in it. We didn't quite know how it would work. So I actually went to District 5060 and participated in the weekend session to see how it was offered. Looked at the curriculum that they had developed, and said, wow, this sounds really good. Talked with a lot of others, and high interest in doing that. So for the first time, we decided we would try it. Our first offering was actually in March of this year. So this is still very new for us. It's still in its developing stage, but we were really pleased with how many people wanted to actually attend. So in fact, we found that we had more people applying to take the weekend than we could handle, because the maximum, in order to have a really effective interaction, we left it at 20. We therefore set it up, promoted it, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. I gathered a team of 6 experienced facilitators, and I charged them with developing the sessions on the specific topics. We did not throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? We took the RLI program, the 3 silos that you showed previously, and said, this is the content that we need to deliver. But how are we going to do it? Moving from 3 days, covering 18 sessions, and move it into 2 days where we could only reasonably cover 12 sessions. One of the things about RLI is that there's part 1, part 2, part 3 of membership, 1, 2, and 3 of the foundation. So it was fairly easy to take some of those and meld them, basically combine it. When you have the 3 separate days, part of the next one, so part 1 was fine. When you get to part 2, there's going to have to be a review of part 1 before you can move on to part 2. So there was a lot of room there in order to make adjustments. In that weekend in March, guess what happened in the world? The pandemic happened, and we lost 1 participant because we did it the first weekend in March. That's when it was becoming really obvious that we had a significant public health problem. And some people did not want to travel, but we only had 1 of the pre-registered persons that did not come because of the COVID virus. So we were really quite pleased with that, but we really simply got in under the wire. What you see now, and then the next one, you can just move that one, is in fact the agenda. This is the agenda. And, you know, if we were spending a lot of time, then we could see how similar some of these sessions were even in title to the ones done in RLI. We did try to change up some of the titles to be really more reflective of what we're talking about. And so leadership in life in Rotary, because a big part of RLI, it's called the Rotary Leadership Institute, is leadership skills, and the fact that every Rotarian is a leader, whether they see themselves or not. People tend to think of leadership in terms of titles and positions, but no, if you're a Rotarian, you are a leader, and that's something that oftentimes we have to remind our Rotarians. You want to move to the next one, please? One of the things that became very obvious was this was a concept that was quite new, and had to really promote it, because a lot of people knew about RLI, but a lot of Rotarians don't know about RLI either. So my promotion focused on reaching every Rotarian in the district. I promoted it with a direct mail out to every Rotarian in our district and covered 3 topics. What is RLI? The new format, and why you should attend. And so go back. Back up. Thank you. Stay here for a minute. Now, because not every Rotarian knew about RLI, I had to put out information about what RLI was. So that was just a brief, and you actually saw that on a previous screen. The new format was explained, and of course, people really like the idea of finishing the entire program in one weekend. And then the why you should attend basically here talks again about Rotary, the fact that Rotary is not the Rotary of 1905. It is a different organization. No organization will survive if it remains the same. So as Kathy, you mentioned previously, the changes in Rotary are becoming more and more rapid. It's happening faster. Rotary remained the same for many, many years. And now, my goodness, they even in the Council of Legislation, which was making changes every 3 years, are now annually reviewing the suggested changes, and the Board of Directors are looking at that at RI. People really like the idea of being able to take a program and complete it in the weekend. They like the idea that they would be meeting and interacting with Rotarians from other clubs. And across like your district is different from ours. You know, we go from just south of Everett all the way out to Hope in British Columbia, and then north to the Fraser, not the Fraser River. Oh yes, it is the other side of the Fraser River. And it's a lot of travel for some people. So this is a little bit of information. I'm sure you'll have questions. There's a lot more I could say. It was hard for me to figure what should I say and what should I wait for people to delve into. I hope that's enough information for you to get the overall concept of the difference between RLI and our new program, which we haven't even thought of naming. We've been promoting it as Rotary Learning Institute, because the focus is on learning about Rotary. So we'll have to deal with perhaps some, proprietary naming with RLI if we want to change that. Or maybe we will talk, well, it's not maybe, I will be talking with RLI to see if our program is parallel enough for them to consider letting us continue to use the acronym RLI.
And Linda Jean, we've got a request from the audience to just go back to allow them to do a quick screenshot of your 2-day agenda.
Right
so
there.
If I will apologize while I interrupt you briefly and stay on this slide for 3, 2, 1, and then give the audience an opportunity if they wanted to capture the agenda for day 2, and 3, 2, 1, and we're
Let
back
me put a
over
little
to
warning. There's a caveat there. That was our beta test, first time we did it. And I should also let you know, because you do your planning, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. While we were delivering it in those 2 days, we made changes on the spot. The facilitators we met, we had to talk. Some of the areas we gave too much time to, other areas we didn't have to have enough time, but on the spot, because I used very, very well qualified facilitators, and we made those changes right on the spot. So that's what we went in with. We came out with something a little bit different. We're working on that. And one of the things we're going to be doing, and this came from the evaluations from the participants, because they knew they were the beta group, and we really encouraged them to give us feedback, both in terms of what was working well for them and what recommended changes they would make. One of the recommended changes was that they get some pre-work, because of course, when you're doing 2 full days of training, there's a whole lot of content. And they thought that, you know, they could have some pre-work so that they could then spend more time in the sessions in doing group work. So we thought that was a good idea. And the
Linda,
other thing that I thought of was the Rotary Learning site has a lot of information that people can do as well.
and Linda Jean, you've got them chomping at the bit because we have a
I'm
question.
so sorry.
No, you're doing great. We have a question. Richard Clark would like to know if you're willing to share your amended agenda at the appropriate time.
Oh, of course,
Thank you, Richard.
that's what Kathy and I are talking about. Is if this is something that you are wanting to go forward with, then very definitely we would be doing that. District 5040 as well found that their participation in RLI has gone down, and they are also looking at the weekend session. And what I would see would be for us to all work together to, you know, to develop and offer this training.
So actually, let's move to the last formal slide, and then we're going to open it up for some discussion. Is that okay, Linda Jean?
Oh, that's fine with me. I'm the guest. I follow you.
Well, I appreciate you giving us some perspective on the history of RLI and how you flexed to adapt it in terms of more manageable time frame, time commitment for Rotarians, and modified some of the content, compressing it, various areas of emphasis as the Rotarians have expressed interest. So what are we thinking about here in 5030? The good news is we've got a lot of lessons learned from Linda Jean and her colleagues, and from our counterparts in our other neighboring districts. And they are willing to help us adopt and get started with RLI here in 5030. So one of the first decisions we're going to be taking is to finalize the format. Do we want to stay with the original format of 3 individual days of content versus sort of this comprehensive weekend? And I personally, after listening to Linda Jean and others, feel if we could package it in a single day-and-a-half event or some type of online equivalent, we could get more people to participate, and you're not strung out with partially completed components of RLI. And I know that was often a challenge back in our old Rotary Academy days. People would finish maybe 4 modules and not get to the last 3, or they'd finish 5. And there was a challenge of that incompletion, where I'd like to be able to make this opportunity more approachable so that when you get into it, you can start it, go through it, and come out the other end completing it. So we'll continue to evaluate that comprehensive weekend option, but I think as a pilot, that's likely where we may start out in terms of our beta. Then we want to set a date, and I think we're looking at sometime this fall for that beta date. And next point, Jeff. An open registration and see if we can find 20 willing Rotarians to be in that first session. Next bullet point. We also want to build facilitator, trainer capacity here in 5030. But one of the things that will help us accelerate the introduction of this program in 5030 is seasoned and experienced facilitators from our sister districts like Linda Jean and others are willing to come and facilitate the first one for us. So it would be a group of 50-30 Rotarians, and we'd have the benefit of facilitators who have done this in their own districts. And part of that launch group would be potential trainers, facilitators in our own district, as well as Rotarians who are looking to deepen their knowledge about Rotary. And one of the big takeaways, I think it makes a lot of sense from all the feedback I've gotten from our sister districts, is do it, evaluate it, and then figure out how you can make improvements on it. And I'm hoping we can do that here in our district so that we might be able to offer a second round of RLI training and you know, a year from now in the spring of 2021. So that's kind of the rough calendar. There still are a lot of details to be determined. Our incoming district trainer, Wendy Fisher, is focused on this, and a small cohort, former Rotary Academy folks, and some other individuals I've invited to help make sure that we get a strong launch to it. And tonight, what I really wanted to do was introduce RLI in general, have you hear the experience of our neighboring districts, and also appreciate that the Rotary Academy had its place in our district's history in terms of fulfilling training needs, but we've got to move on, and we're looking at alternatives. And right now, RLI seems to be the most compelling alternative for the future of Rotary-related training in our district.
Well, and Linda Jean and Kathy, you'll be pleased to know you're already booking business. Jacob Mahler says he's in. Or she's in.
Okay. Well, let's go to Q&A. If we can.
Can I say something first?
Of course, of course.
Okay. I don't feel I did a very good job on selling RLI. And I think it's something that your district ought to really consider. Can you go back to the slide with the part 1, 2, 3?
Day one?
The thing, no, not the day one, the way back to the 1, 2, 3 at the very closer to, I don't remember which slide that was.
This is your first slide after
slide 10.
Slide 10.
Slide 10.
Here we go.
Right, that's the one. One of the things about, and one of the advantages of RLI, and one of the reasons that I believe Carol really liked the whole concept, was not just the content, but the fact that part 1, part 2, part 3, each comes with a complete guide. There's a faculty guide, which takes you right through the delivery of each one of these sessions. And there's a participant guide that you write in, actually, that you actually fill out, that you go through all the different components. And I don't know if you can see this here. I have this is one of them. And you get one of these for each one for your participants. It's a bit costly if you put it in full color like they did. That's the way it was originally. But of course, today we have thumb drives. You just give someone a thumb drive, they can print out.
Go electronic.
Exactly. And there's a lot to be said about that. It's a lot more work if you're going to maintain your curriculum yourself. However, one of the things that I really find is whenever you're in a group, the collective knowledge is absolutely amazing. And because of technology today, making those updates and changes and getting them to everyone immediately is a lot easier than it was when we had these big binders. RLI changed their material, updated it along with the Council of Legislation every 3 years. So in 2015, changes were made and they went until 2018. So right now, the most recent material, which is what you see here in terms of the outline, goes from 2018 to 2022. Guess what? We're in 2020, and there are already significant changes to the content of some of these topics that when we did ours, we had to do a lot of work, particularly in foundation, also in terms of membership and the strategic plan and the strategic directions that Rotary International are taking, the inclusion of their diversity statement. None of that is in here. Well,
Now
it was in our 2-day weekend.
exactly. You modified it. You updated it further.
But you know, I think you need to really consider the fact that going this new direction means work. However, I think we can have a lot of cooks making a good smorgasbord.
Well, we'd be in it together as sister districts, keeping having the core content. Jeff, let's move forward to the Q&A, if that's okay. We got that toward the end of the deck. Great.
Sorry to back up, but I didn't want people to think that there's anything wrong with RLI other than the fact that we can't do it in a weekend.
It's all good.
RLI content is available. The trainer resources, the guides are available. So we're not reinventing the wheel.
Exactly.
And that's really what we're looking for, because before we were inventing the wheels.
So
Let's
as
go
we
to
go
Q&A.
to questions, I wanted to invite all attendees to either submit a question through typing in the Q&A, and if you'd like, I'd be happy if you raise your hand. I'll open your microphone and you can introduce yourself and ask your question directly. While we're giving folks a chance to consider their bravery to open their mic, Craig Gillis asks, have you considered creating learning teams, groups of participants who might meet prior to the session to review and process some pre-RLI session materials? And another question, are you considering taking this online given our current health restrictions for travel?
Yes and yes. Linda Jean talked about one of the, in fact, maybe Jeff, you can close down the slide, and then Linda Jean and I can just be on the screen, and anybody else who poses a question. But Craig, the answer is yes. As we heard from Linda Jean, one of the participants, or several of the participants, made the recommendation after the March session up in District 5050, is what if we did some pre-work so that we could actually invest more time during the session in discussion and sharing. And I think that would make a lot of sense. And if it's not investing more time in sharing, it's having our focus time when we're together online, sharing, and it may reduce the actual amount of meeting time if we can do some of the pre-work. And the answer regarding moving this online is absolutely yes. And in fact, because we likely will be online in the fall, we will be inviting our visiting facilitators, Linda Jean or others, to join us virtually. So we're going to be pushed to move this online, but we also want to have content and a format that we could migrate back into in-person sessions when we're able to do that. So we got to be able to tilt according to what we're allowed to do in terms of, especially here in King County, meeting in person and people's comfort in meeting in person. So we'll direct it toward online in the fall and perhaps be ready for an in-person session next spring.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another question from Megan Shore asking, are there other performance training expectations from RI on a club if they do use RI's RLI curriculum? Besides the DEI statement you just mentioned, does RI include evaluation forms with their RLI materials?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to answer that. RLI is not a Rotary program. It's not a Rotary program. It's supported by Rotary. They acknowledge that it's really great for the districts to train their Rotarians in all things Rotary. It has nothing to do with Rotary International whatsoever.
It takes the lead from Rotary International in terms of the information that they share, but RLI is a separate entity. It is not
Totally
under the umbrella of Rotary International, but
not
it's
at all.
Sanctioned. Maybe that's not.
Yeah.
But it's been blessed and promoted by Rotary International as the preeminent training program for all things Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a hand raised by Richard Clark. We'll be coming to you shortly, but in the meantime, Colleen Turner asks, what is the cost to attend?
The
Well,
cost, yeah.
oh, you go ahead, Kathy.
I was going to say, my understanding is the cost to attend was really to cover expenses for a venue and for meals. I know in other districts where Rotarians had to travel, local Rotarians provided home hospitality for Rotarians coming in from out of the area. Here in our district, I don't imagine anything more than a very nominal charge to some administrative fees. Certainly nothing more than what we had been charging for the academy, which was, you know, maybe $85. So not financially burdensome. We haven't actually put a budget together, but I'm imagining that we will have certainly a low budget version for the first offering, which would be online.
Well, we always, since I became district governor like a few years ago, we only charge our costs, period. In RLI, previously, it was standard to charge $85 US straight across. But the cost of delivering the RLI in Canada was significantly less than that because the Canadian dollar was less. And so I started, and then we've continued to only make it cost recovery. There was no reason for us to make money on it. So depending on, like you said, food, facilities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say a little bit about the weekend program. The weekend program for a lot of people ends up with a hotel stay. But of course, we negotiated a really good price for the hotel, but that was individual because there was some home hosting, some people live close enough, and some people preferred to stay and take the weekend in the hotel. They would come in on early Saturday morning. We would have provided a dinner. Dinner is provided because so many people stay. And then Sunday. Material costs are things that we can really adjust. Some people like to have a manual. I found that when we did the weekend, we decided not to do a manual, primarily because we were just developing. So why would you invest in that? So we worked with handouts. Each of our facilitators with their sessions had the handouts. And I went to Office Depot because they get that Rotary thing and only cost you $0.015 a sheet of paper to do all of your photocopying at Office Depot down there. So that didn't cost very much at all. And only 2 people will ask for a manual. Everyone else was perfectly happy leaving with their stack of papers that they received as we actually used them. And I got, just regular notebook paper, lined notebook paper, and we provided them notebook paper and a binder, and then they developed their own binders, not manuals. So.
Great. Well, I'm going to, Richard, open your mic. While doing that, Michael Mollahan asks, again, what would the total time to commit to the training comprehensively, what would you recommend budgeting time-wise?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors here. If we do it as a comprehensive weekend, I'm imagining you've got between 6 and 8 hours of time that you are committing. And then if we decide we're going to ask for some pre-work in order to compress the time during the weekend, then we'd be front loading, an hour or 2 of pre-work. I don't think we're far enough along in making that determination, but certainly the intent is to not make it onerous. So I will say we're looking in the range of an 8-hour commitment of training time. And that's not that dissimilar from the Rotary Academy, where you often had to spend about an hour, maybe an hour and a half on each module to complete it. So we're looking for some equivalence in terms of the time invested before with the time now. We may find we want to add additional content, which will require additional time for either preparation or discussion. And I think we'll be listening to the first beta participants in the fall if they say we needed more time, or we spend too much time, and just listen to that.
It would not be 8 hours. It's 12 hours minimum. We're talking about 2 days of training. We're taking 3 full days of training, 18 sessions, each session 55 minutes. Just do the math. And we're taking it down to what I saw as 12 hours of training, you know, with breaks. If we look at doing some of the pre-stuff and the fact that the Rotary Learning Center has a number of courses that are very applicable and could easily be pre-work, we could really take it down. You mentioned a day and a half. I've already, you know, mapped out a day and a half easily, where you don't have to have two full days. One of the reasons I believe that some of the people said we could do pre-work was, one of the things I like to do is Rotary trivia. You know, when I have a group, I find out what do they know about the topic by doing a little trivia game with prizes to ask, and then we get to find out in the group what is the shared knowledge or the individual knowledge, and then we know really what to pinpoint in terms of spending more time. And they thought, well, you know, we could do pre-work and then we could just come and do trivia to find out whether we learned it or not.
All right, Richard, your mic is open. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I've got a comment and a question. The comment is, when we were starting RLI in Southern Ontario some time ago, we brought 3 districts together that bordered each other to deliver it jointly. So that meant a number of things. One, it meant that we could have facilitators from one district facilitating in a second district, so that people didn't get tired of seeing the same old bunch of folks. And it also meant that we had a larger pool of facilitators to pull on. And then one of the rules, and of course we were doing the 1, 2, and 3 separately, was that a Rotarian in any of the 3 districts could of course attend any session in any one of the other districts. And we also had one of the districts was split between the Canada and the US. So we would try to run sessions near the, obviously on both sides of the border, but also when we could, somewhere close to the borders of the districts, right? And that really worked quite well. And that program, to my knowledge, is still going on very well. My question was, have Kathy or Linda Jean, have either of you talked to Chris Offer about his attempt to do an online RLI session a couple of years ago?
I participated in the online session.
Oh, did you?
That
Okay.
was done. I did both. They did part 1 and part 2. They never got to part 3. There were some issues with it. The curriculum, what they attempted to do was to offer the manual, the curriculum, the way it was set up online. That doesn't work. Online is different from face-to-face.
Yeah.
And that's what went wrong with that. I do believe that we have, and of course we're getting a lot of experience now.
That's
I mean,
true.
I have 10 Zoom meetings. This is my 3rd Zoom meeting today, okay?
Yeah.
I have about 10 a week is my average. And we're learning as we go along how to be more effective. And I do believe, first of all, I think we're going to be forced, because I don't think we're going to be doing any group stuff in the fall. I really don't. So we're going to have to develop a way of delivering it with the reality that what people need to be able to do is to connect. But we don't have to physically be able to touch people to make those connections effective. And when we get it all done, and you know, they say one head is better than 2, and I mean, no, the other way around. 2 heads are better than 1. Yeah. But the group really can make a huge difference. I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think we can, at least most of it, or enough that I think doing what you're attempting to do is you could probably get down to, you know, half of it being done online and maybe half of it in a in-person session when we're able to do in-person sessions or something, but. And, it
And
was-
also potentially to offer people those options, because not, you know, one of the things that I thought about, and I also realized with our weekend session, is there are people who really will not be able to participate on a Sunday. They're committed to their church or to their faith that doesn't allow them to do that kind of work on a Sunday. And so the 2 days, I want to call it a 2-day rather than weekend,
yeah.
because any 2 days will do. We can do, you know, Friday, Saturday, but we can certainly make adjustments to meet many, many more needs than we are able to do now.
Sometime, I'll go one more and then I'll stop talking, guys. Sorry. Some years ago, when I was in central Canada and working with New England region of the U.S., what I discovered was they did this wasn't for RLI, but this was for other training. They never did it on a weekend. They always took a weekday. They said it's easier for people to take a day off from work than to take a day out of the weekend. So they always did their training on the weekend. Now, coming from Ontario, there was no way I could have got away with that, but that worked. It was really quite interesting. So I don't know if there's any, Kathy, if there's any difference between your part of Cascadia and our part of Cascadia, but.
And Richard, thank you for those great questions. Kathy, please answer Richard's
I've
final
got to
question.
turn some lights on in here. The sun's gone down and it's getting dark. I have no lights on in the house.
Well, we'll answer the last few questions and then we'll wrap it up. But what
Yeah,
I'd like,
I've got one last question, Kathy, from Howard Cohen. He'd like to know who would be the ideal candidate for this program.
all right. As we mentioned initially, the formal, at its inception and in the early years, the Rotary Leadership Institute was for Rotary leaders, club officers, committee chairs, board members. Those were the real target audience. Increasingly, though, the content is relevant for the newest Rotarians, so it could be part of an orientation, and for Rotarians at large to just have a better Rotary experience to appreciate this fabulous organization and all of its dimensions. So we're pitching it less toward Rotary leaders and more toward all Rotarians. And I love the way Linda Jean said, all Rotarians are leaders. And so the takeaways should be helpful for everyone, whether you're actively serving in a leadership capacity in your club or you're just a leader at large out in your community. What I'm looking for coming out of this session, though, is if you are interested in being part of our beta group in the fall, or if you know someone who we'd like to nominate to be part of our beta group in the fall, we'd really like to get going and spend the summer answering many of the unanswered questions, getting under the hood and finalizing some details for the launch of this in the fall. But we won't have a launch if we don't have some, willing folks to step up and say, I'll be part of the first 20 in District 5030 to do the test drive of this program. So if you are interested in participating, either contact me directly, make a note in the chat, which we will retain, and either for yourself or for someone else who you think might appreciate the opportunity. And I will also say, not only beta participants, but we are also looking to build a bench of RLI facilitators here in District 5030. And so we'll need prospective facilitators to come and be participants in these early sessions as well. So while we have the benefit of our guest facilitators from our sister districts, we have a longer view strategy that within a year, we can get up and running in terms of both leading and participating in RLI. Although I still like the idea of having the special guests like Linda Jean come and join us, because you bring a fresh perspective. But we'd like to also be able to have our own bench of
absolutely.
Well, I'd like to thank both Linda Jean and Kathy for doing a masterful job of taking us through tonight's content. We are at the top of the hour, and we Rotarians typically do end promptly when the bell rings. But Kathy, I'll turn it over to you for any final closing remarks.
Well, again, thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. Thank you so much, Linda Jean, for taking the time and the very generous offer to help us and share with us your experiences, materials you're thinking as you've been out at the literally in the vanguard of making RLI relevant. And Jeff, I'd love to have you come out from behind the Rotary wheel so we can see you, and thank you for your technical support tonight.
And thank you very much, Kathy, for inviting me. And thank you very much for being willing to work with me and others.
Of course.
I mean, it's not my, I get a lot of benefit out of this. Our district, the sharing is important.
Like
Sharing is important to us, so thank you.
JP raised their hand already, so you've got at least one book of business closed.
Wonderful.
I'm going to have a lot of interest.
Good.
Again, stay safe, everyone. Shelter in place or stick to your jail cell, depending upon your point of view, Linda Jean. But
I feel like it.
take care, everyone. We'll see you on the next Rotary Festival of Training. Take care. Have a great night.
Thanks, Linda Jean.
Thank you very
Good night,
much.
everybody.
Bye.